I came across this article today that I wanted to share with you because I thought it was so interesting, and it really sort of, I think it really talks about what the feeling I've had, which is actually that our political parties, the Republican Party, or I should say the base, the voting base, the Republican base, and the Democrat base are moving more to the left. And it's the establishment, the old timers, those who are running the show up in Washington that are still holding on and trying to maintain their grip on American political power. And they're the ones who are more to the right. And they're resisting the shift to the left. But I do believe that there is a shift happening here in America on both sides of the aisle that is moving more to the populist left. And there's obviously going to be some differences between the Republicans and the Democrats. And we're going to kind of see that shake out in the next, I would say, several years. We'll see how where the differences really come in, what makes the new Republican Party, what makes the new Democrat Party. It's a really, I think, interesting and exciting time to be around and witnessing this in politics. It's so much more fun than just sort of same old, stodgy. Here's the Republican Party, what we know it to be. They're for big business and war and low taxes. And here's the Democratic Party, and therefore immigration and helping, welfare programs for the people and, whatever you might think that the two parties are for and whatever your sort of thought process is for the two parties. Right now, that's all changing. Everything's getting mixed up, and it's so interesting. And this article, this op-ed that was published today in the New York Times, I thought this really showcased a lot of it. I'm not going to read it all to you, but essentially this author here, Christopher Bizkirk, I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, says there's a generational divide amongst Republicans. And he says it shows up most clearly in the debate over whether parents should get federal money for their children. So this guy, I think, is a Republican, more on the right, and he's discussing the differences in the Republican Party generationally, noticing that the old school Republicans, the older generation, still sort of hold on to that, Reaganism ideology. They're still holding on to that low taxation, low government intervention, none of that stuff. And we don't need these stimulus, the money. We don't need the bailouts. It's all a waste of money. We don't have any money, all that austerity. And he's saying that there is this older generation of Republicans who are still holding on to that. But he's noticing as he's talking to the younger Republicans that their attitudes are totally different. And I noticed that amongst my own inner circle of friends of Republicans as well, that they're way more open to some sort of economic reform here in America. They're realizing that they cannot obtain the American dream. It's difficult for them to think about having a family, a house, children, supporting that family. It's difficult for them to think about that. That's especially true for those in their early 30s, late 20s, to mid 30s. They're really feeling the crunch. They're feeling like, I'm making all this money. I've got a good job, and I still can't buy a house and support my kids. I still can't have, a stay-at-home spouse, whether you be the male or the woman or whatever. They're feeling this crunch, feeling like, okay, so we have to live in a two-parent working household. We have to, that means put our kids in daycare. We can't afford any of that. So we're going to have to hold off on having children. Certainly can't buy a house because a house payment's going to mean that we're house poor. And then we really won't be able to afford that daycare. And so the younger generation is really feeling this crunch. And so the younger generation is more open to programs, reform, controls even. We're starting to hear in that younger generation of Republicans things like regulation, right? Words that are poisonous to the older Republicans. Younger Republicans are saying we need more regulation, or we need to stop the selling off of our country. We allow foreigners to come in and buy up all of our resources, and then Americans themselves can't afford any of that stuff. So we're starting to see this shift happening. And he really paints this picture in this article. And he talks about it mainly with the stimulus package that was just passed, and talking about how the Biden plan, it says right here, The Biden plan will pay families a cash benefit up to $3,600 per year for each child under 6 years old and $3,000 per year for those aged 6 to 17. A version of this plan was proposed in 2017 by Senators Michael Bennet and Sherrod Brown as a standalone bill that never went anywhere. In the relief bill, that passed the Senate over the weekend and must now be passed again by the House. It is available only this year, but the authors of the proposal surely hope that once it's in place, it will be made permanent. Things got interesting for Republicans when Mitt Romney outbid the Biden administration's proposal with his Family Security Act, which would provide an even larger child allowance, giving parents a $1,400 cash payment at birth, followed up by a $4,200 per year for children under 6 and $3,000 for kids 6 to 17. It goes on here to say Republicans have long prided themselves on being the pro-family party, but what does that really mean? The debate over the child allowance makes that palpable, and it is forcing Republicans to decide who they are. Will they be the party of capital gains tax cuts, of cash payments that make it more practical for parents or of cash payments that make it more practical for parents to raise their own children? Is there a way for the party to embrace both? So he goes on to say, this becomes more apparent when you start to realize that the senators that were working together on trying to give more money to the people were Senators Bernie Sanders, obviously an independent, progressive, populist left candidate, populist left politician, and Senator Josh Hawley from Missouri, a Republican. And so you start to see these strange bedfellows that are being made on both sides of the aisle. And it's because things are shifting. Mentalities are shifting. Josh Hawley's younger. He's sitting there looking at things and saying, this isn't working for the Republicans anymore. We need to be pro-family. We need to be pro-individual. And instead, we're allowing the corporations and really, it really comes into play when they start to realize that many of these corporations are not even American-based corporations, that they're foreign corporations taking advantage, and that the American people are losing all of the resources and money to these foreign corporations. So even though I believe, a lot of people think that we're moving to the right, and I kind of wonder, what do they mean by that? What is their idea of right wing and what is their idea of left wing? Because those definitions seem to be, for one, I don't think anybody can agree on any of the terms when it comes to anything. So it's difficult to even pin down definitions at all. When I say what's a progressive, people don't know. What's a liberal, people don't know. What's the left? What is the right? What do those terms actually mean? But I do think a lot of people believe that in this country, we're shifting to the right. And I don't see that happening at all. I see us shifting more to the left. Donald Trump was more left than any other Republican in my lifetime. He was the most left-leaning Republican than any of the other Republicans, because he had policies that were more traditionally leftist, right? Whether or not he followed through with those, whether or not he really believed them, that's a whole different conversation to have. But what Donald Trump was he ran on those policies that were popular with the voting base. So he ran on the policy of less war, let's end the wars. That's a traditionally leftist idea. And yet the Republican voting base that voted Donald Trump into office said yes to that. And then Trump says things like, we want to reform these deals that we've got, these trade deals. We want to make the trade deals better, more regulated, have more controls on these trade deals, not so loose, not so open. We don't want to be taken advantage of anymore because of loose, open trade deals. So he says we need to tighten things up. That's a leftist idea. So this idea that we're moving more to the right, I think when people hear that, what they're thinking of is because of the push for tightened immigration laws. Or they believe the narrative that there's this alarming rise of white supremacy rising up in the country, which I don't believe is really happening. I do think that people are becoming more radical, and they'll just kind of pick their radical cause simply because their lives are getting harder. And when people start to feel the real crunch and the weight of a tough life, I think what happens is they start to go towards a radical idea. And they latch on to whatever radical group is around them at that time that is intriguing and accepting and gives them a sense of camaraderie with somebody else. So yeah, that could be some really radical, abhorrent ideas. But I think fundamentally it's stemming from a place of I can't make it. I can't survive. I'm not feeling like there's anything to go for in this life right now. And so when people say we're moving to the right, I think they're talking mostly about these immigration or racism. And a lot of that, though, is coming from the Democratic Party. You're not really hearing so much of that coming from Republicans, right? They're always on defense. And it's the Democrats on offense saying, well, it's because you people are racist and that's why we have all these problems. But then you're hearing all the Republicans say, well, the reason why we're having all these problems is because we're at war and we're letting too many people into the country. And so we're diluting the working base, which means we end up having to compete for jobs, which means that if there's more, it's a supply and demand. It's a math equation. If there's more people willing to work and there's fewer jobs, that means that the employers don't have to pay as much money. When they don't have to pay as much money, they can then pay you, they can pay less and they can offer less. And if you don't take the job, somebody else will take it for less. And then that causes you a problem when you're trying to rent an apartment or you're trying to buy a house. Causes you a problem when you're trying to have children and you have to pay for daycare and you can't, right? The cost of all these living things go up because people are trying to afford things and yet the wages continue to stay stagnant. So there's this push. Obviously, people are saying we don't want people in the country, and then that's viewed as racist. I was watching MSNBC, Joy Reid even, and she was talking about how, Governor Abbott in Texas is racist because he was upset that all of the people coming into the country from the southern border were not being tested. They were not being quarantined, that they were being allowed in without even any controls for COVID. And she was saying, how dare he say that that's racist? And that's what, Nancy Pelosi and all them were saying at the very beginning when it came to Chinese New Year, Lunar New Year. If you're Vietnamese, we don't call it Chinese New Year. We call it Lunar New Year. So when it came around last year and it was about Lunar New Year and they were saying, oh, get out there and go and enjoy Chinatown and Chinese New Year and how racist is it to close the borders, even though we know now that is actually the only real way to stop the virus is to close your borders, is to not let it into your community to begin with. Once it's in, I think all bets are off and there's really not much you can do. But the only strategy that does seem to work is to keep it out. And so meanwhile, you've got Joy Reid saying, well, now you're a racist for saying you want to try to keep the virus out, that these Hispanic people are coming in with the virus. And so now that's racist, So we're hearing these narratives and it's painting a picture like the U.S. is moving more into this right-wing, hard right rhetoric, when in actuality, when you look at the policies that people are voting for and you pay attention to what's going on in Congress, you realize that actually our politicians, especially the Republican politicians, are moving to the left. And it's causing, now it'll do one of two things, and this is where it's going to get tricky. It's either going to push the Democrats to the right and they'll become the right-wing party because they just want to be opposite of the Republicans. So it's possible that Democrats just say, well, whatever you say, and they kind of did this with Trump. Well, whatever you say and do, it's bad. So we're just going to do the opposite of you at all costs. No matter what it is, we're doing the opposite of you. So it could potentially push the Democrats to the right, but I don't really see that happening. What I see happening is the Democrats being pushed more to the left because they're being made fools for naught. When they've got Republicans like Josh Hawley and Matt Gaetz who are calling for more policies for the people and less war, it's making them look like idiots, right? They can't then say, no, we're the party for the people, but we're for war and we don't want to give you any checks, any relief. So we're not really seeing them being moved to the right. In fact, we're seeing Democrats shoved a little to the left because Republicans are pulling them that way. So I think the country moves in whichever direction the Republicans move, right? Because the Republican Party is the conservative party. They're the party of no. They usually say no to everything. They're harder to move. They're conservative-minded people, so it's harder to sway them. It's harder to convince them. They tend to just, they like the same old, they're comfortable and they don't like change. And so it's really hard to pull them out of their mentality. But when you can move them, right, and it's hard to do, but when you can move them, I think that the response from the other party is they don't have a choice but to move along with them. And I think there was a time period when Republicans were moved more to the right. We saw that with the Tea Party and Freedom Caucus, more Tea Party movement. But now we're seeing a new movement. We're seeing a populist right-wing movement that was ushered in by Donald Trump. And we're seeing that continue to take hold, and it doesn't look like it's going anywhere. And it looks like it's continuing to move the Republican Party to the left, which inevitably moves the Democratic Party to the left. So I am making the case that America's not actually moving to the right, like many will say, but America's actually moving to the left. And this is an exciting time to be engaged in politics, to see what's going on. And it's also really important that if you've always felt like you were a lifelong Democrat or you've always felt like you were a lifelong Republican, get rid of those ideas, because you don't know what you're going to be. You don't know what you're going to be in a couple of years. You have no idea. And that's exciting that you don't know what you're going to be in a couple of years. You have no idea. And just remember that political parties are not your birthright. They're not they're not a religion. They're nothing you need to be loyal to. You do not need to be loyal to any political party or any politician. It's just ideas, and you need to vote for the person who has the best ideas. Doesn't matter what their label is. So it's an exciting time. I'm curious to see what happens. I have a lot of hope, and I'm keeping myself open. I don't know. Maybe in 4 years I'll be a Republican. Who knows? Maybe I'll be voting for a Republican if they keep it up and they're moving more to the left and they're more populist. Then I don't know what's going to happen. So very exciting. There's another article here. This one was from NBC. It says the world has changed. The scrambled new politics of the minimum wage. Also talking about how, Bernie Sanders and Josh Hawley and Amazon don't find themselves on the same side of an issue, but now they are. How weird, right? Republicans and really populists. Populists are getting together. Doesn't matter that they have the Republican or the Democrat label. Weird. I don't know. Something's weird going on, and it's happening. And I'm seeing this more and more, and it's exciting to me. And I hope it's exciting to you. All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. I really appreciate you. I appreciate you watching the show. I am not going to be live streaming Wednesday and Thursday because I'm actually going to be flying out and I'm going to be on Tim Pool's show. So if any of you are fans of Tim Pool, I'm going to be on Tim Pool's Timcast. And if you're not a fan of Tim Pool, keep an open mind. I think you should watch anyway, because I think it's important that we have conversations with a variety of people. I know some of you are like, but whatever, I mean, don't be a cancel culture person. Just, be open and watch and listen, and you don't have to agree. And that's kind of the beauty of it. No one's forcing you. So anyway, I'm going to be on Tim's show. So I'm going to be out of town, appearing there, doing that. So that means I will not be doing the live stream on Wednesday and Thursday. I'm going to try to make up for it somehow. So I might be doing segments Friday. Maybe I'll put out some segments over the weekend. Maybe, I doubt it. I'll get some segments done while I'm out of town. But we'll see what happens. So, but I will be here tomorrow night. So be sure to tune back in tomorrow night. I will be here live streaming. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for your support of the channel. Couldn't do this without you guys, and your contributions to the show really does mean a lot to me. Thank you guys so much, and I will see you next time.